We can get rid of him by making it look like an accident.
Yes, that will be good.
Chidi Okonkwo stood on his balcony, coffee in hand, surveying the Lagos skyline with a sense of profound gratitude. At 42, he had everything a man could want. A thriving logistics company he'd built from nothing, a beautiful home, 2 children excelling at universities abroad, and most importantly, a marriage that was the envy of everyone who knew them. "Darling, your breakfast is ready," Amara's melodious voice called from inside. Chidi turned to see his wife of 15 years standing in the doorway, her dark brown skin glowing in the morning light, her elegant frame wrapped in a silk robe. Even after all these years, she still took his breath away. Her smile was warm, genuine, or so he believed. "Come in, my love," he replied, following her into their spacious dining room. The table was set with his favorites: yam porridge with fresh fish, plantains fried to golden perfection, and freshly squeezed orange juice. Amara had been especially attentive lately, and Chidi appreciated every gesture. Running a successful business was exhausting, and coming home to a wife who understood and supported him made everything worthwhile. "You've been working so hard lately," Amara said, settling into the chair beside him rather than across from him. She reached over and massaged his shoulders as he ate. "I worry about you, Chidi. When was the last time you took a real break?" Chidi leaned into her touch, closing his eyes briefly. "The company need me right now. We're negotiating that new contract with—" I know, Amara interrupted gently. "But you need to take care of yourself, too. You can't pour from an empty cup, my darling." He turned to look at her, touched by her concern. "What are you suggesting?" Amara's face lit up with an idea that seemed to have just occurred to her, though she'd been planning this conversation for weeks. "Why don't you take a trip to Enugu? Check on our family land. Spend a few days away from Lagos traffic and business stress. Just you, the open road, and some peace and quiet." "That's actually not a bad idea," Chidi mused, surprised he hadn't thought of it himself. "It has been a while since I checked on the property. But I should probably have Cunnel drive me, or take one of the company vehicles." No, Amara said quickly, then softened her tone. "I mean, this should be your personal time, darling. Take your own car, drive at your own pace, stop wherever you want. No schedule, no driver waiting around. Just freedom. You deserve that." Something in her insistence made Chidi pause for a fraction of a second, but he dismissed a fleeting doubt. This was Amara, his partner, his confidant, the woman who had stood by him when he had nothing, who had believed in his business dreams when everyone else called him foolish. "You really think I should go alone?" he asked. "I know you should," Amara replied, leaning forward to kiss his forehead. "You've been carrying so much stress, baby. I can see it in your eyes, in the way your shoulders are always tense. A few days away will do wonders for you. And honestly," she added with a playful smile, "I could use some time to miss you properly." Chidi laughed, pulling her close. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" If he had been looking at her face at that exact moment, he might have caught the brief flicker of something cold in her eyes, quickly masked by affection. But he wasn't looking. He was too busy feeling grateful, too busy believing in the fairy tale of his perfect marriage. Over the next few days, Amara brought up the trip repeatedly, each time with subtle urgency disguised as loving concern. She'd catch him working late and sigh, "This is exactly why you need that Enugu trip, darling." When he seemed stressed about a business deal, she'd massage his temples and whisper, "Just a few more days until your break. I can't wait for you to come back refreshed." On Tuesday evening, 3 days before the planned trip, Chidi came home earlier than usual. He'd left a meeting to surprise Amara, thinking they could have an early dinner together. As he entered the front door, he heard her voice coming from their bedroom, talking on the phone. "I told you it's all set for Friday," she was saying, her voice lower than usual. "He's taking his personal car, driving alone, just like we planned." Chidi paused at the bottom of the stairs, not intending to eavesdrop, but curious about who she was talking to. Before he could call out to announce his presence, Amara's voice suddenly became louder, more normal. "Yes, Mama. I'll make sure to send the money for the church building fund. I have to go now. Love you, too." She appeared at the top of the stairs, phone in hand, her face breaking into a surprised but delighted smile. "Chitty, you're home early. I was just talking to your mother about the church fundraiser." "I heard," Chitty said, climbing the stairs to embrace her. "You're always so thoughtful, taking care of everyone." That night, as they lay in bed, Amara curled against Chitty's side, tracing lazy patterns on his chest. "Are you excited about Friday?" she asked softly. "I am, actually," Chitty admitted. "You were right. I do need this break. 3 for days away, clear my head, come back ready to tackle everything." "Take as long as you need, darling," Amara murmured. "A week, even. I'll be here when you get back." She kissed his chest, then his jaw, then his lips. "I love you so much, Chitty. More than you'll ever know." "I love you too, Amara. You're my everything." In the darkness, Amara's smile was invisible, and her eyes, which held no warmth at all, were hidden in shadow. Thursday afternoon, the day before the trip, Chitty decided to have his car serviced. It was a long drive to Enugu, and he wanted to make sure everything was in perfect condition. But when he mentioned this to Amara, she immediately discouraged him. "Oh, darling, you just had it serviced last month, remember? That mechanic you trust so much. What's his name? Emika's cousin? You're always so careful with maintenance. The car is fine." "I suppose you're right," Chitty agreed, though he couldn't quite remember when he last had it serviced. "But maybe I should at least check the tire pressure and—" "Baby, you're overthinking." Amara laughed, coming up behind him in his home office where he was researching service centers. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders, resting her chin on his head. "This is exactly the kind of stress you're trying to escape. The car is fine. You're fine. Everything is fine. Just pack some comfortable clothes, take your favorite music, and go enjoy yourself." Her phone buzzed on his desk, and Chitty saw the name T flash on the screen before Amara quickly grabbed it, the call going unanswered. "Who's T?" Chitty asked casually. "Oh, that's Tola, from the Market Women's Association," Amara said smoothly. "She's always calling about one thing or another. I'll call her back later." She kissed the top of Chitty's head. "Now, let me pack some snacks for your trip. You know how you get when you're hungry on the road." Thursday evening, their last night together before the trip, was perfect. Amara cooked all of Chitty's favorite dishes. Egusi soup with assorted meat, pounded yam, fried plantains, and her special pepper sauce that no one else could replicate. She'd even gotten his favorite wine, and they ate by candlelight on their terrace, the Lagos night alive with distant sounds of city. "This is beautiful," Chitty said, looking at his wife across the flickering candles. "Thank you for always taking such good care of me." "It's my pleasure, my king," Amara replied, raising her glass to him. "To your safe travels and peaceful return." They clinked glasses, and Chitty drank deeply, savoring both the wine and the moment. If only he had known that across town, in a modest apartment in Suralere, a man named Tun Badmus was preparing tools in a black bag, tools that would be used on Chitty's car under cover of darkness that very night. If only he had known that the woman sitting across from him, smiling so tenderly in the candlelight, had been meticulously planning his death for the past 3 months. If only he had known that every affectionate gesture, every loving word, every tender moment over the past weeks had been a performance, a careful manipulation to ensure he would take this trip alone, in this specific car, on this specific route. But Chitty knew none of this. He only knew that he loved his wife, trusted her completely, and felt blessed beyond measure to have her in his life. That night, they made love with what Amara ensured felt like desperate passion, clinging to him as if she couldn't bear to let him go. "Promise you'll be careful," she whispered against his neck. "Promise you'll come back to me." "I promise," Chitty murmured, stroking her hair. "Nothing could keep me away from you." At 2:47 a.m., while Chitty slept soundly beside her, Amara's phone vibrated silently under her pillow. She slipped out of bed with practiced silence and went to the bathroom, closing the door before checking the message. "It's done. No way he survives the descent into Enugu. Rest easy, baby. This time tomorrow you're free. We're free." Amara deleted the message, looked at herself in the mirror, and practiced her devastated widow face one more time. She needed to be perfect when she got the call tomorrow. The tears needed to be real, the collapse authentic, the grief utterly convincing. Satisfied with her rehearsal, she slipped back into bed beside her husband, the man she'd vowed to love and cherish until death do them part. She'd just arranged for that death to come much sooner than he'd ever expected. Friday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine and a gentle breeze, a perfect day for a drive. Chitty woke early, energized by the prospect of his trip. Amara was already awake, having barely slept from nervous anticipation. She watched him shower, helped him pack the last few items, and walked in the car, arm wrapped tightly around his waist. The black Mercedes sedan sat in their driveway, polished and gleaming, looking perfectly normal. There was no visible sign of the sabotage that had been carefully executed just hours ago. The brake line subtly severed in a way that would hold for a while, but failed catastrophically on a steep downward slope. Precisely the kind of slope that marked the descent into Enugu from the highway. "You have everything?" Amara asked, checking his bags in the trunk one more time, stalling, making sure neighbors would see her being the perfect, caring wife. "I think so," Chitty laughed. "It's just a few days, my love. You'd think I was leaving for a month the way you're fussing." "I can't help it," Amara said, and the tears that welled in her eyes were real, though not for the reasons Chitty imagined. They were tears of stress, of fear that something might go wrong with the plan, of anticipation for the freedom that awaited her. "I just love you so much." Chitty pulled her close, feeling the tremor in her body. Hey, I'll be back before you know it. And I'll call you when I get there. Okay? Multiple times a day if it makes you feel better." "Please do," Amara whispered, thinking that there would be no calls, no arrival. No, I made it safely. Just one call from a stranger or a police officer, telling her there had been a terrible accident. She walked him to the driver's door, kissed him one last time. A long, deep kiss that their neighbor, Mrs. Adelik, would later tell the police about, describing how devoted Amara seemed to her husband. "I love you, Chitty Okonkwo," Amara said, touching his face gently. "You are my heart." "And you are mine," Chitty replied, getting into the car. "I'll call you from the first rest stop." Amara stepped back as he started the engine, which purred a life smoothly. Everything seemed perfect, normal, safe. She waved as he backed out of the driveway, blew him a kiss, and stood in the driveway waving until the car turned the corner and disappeared from view. The moment he was out of sight, Amara's face changed. The tears stopped instantly. The soft, loving expression hardened into something calculating and cold. She went back inside, walking past the framed wedding photos on the wall without a glance, past the living room where they'd laughed together countless times, straight to her bedroom. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Tund. "He just left. It's really happening." The response came immediately. "By tonight, you'll be the wealthiest widow in Lagos. And you'll be mine. All mine. Just a few more hours, baby." Amara smiled, a genuine smile this time, full of anticipation and dark satisfaction. She opened her laptop and pulled up the insurance documents. 50 million naira in life insurance policies, all with her as the sole beneficiary. The house was in both their names, but would become hers. The business would be sold. Everything Chitty had worked for, everything he'd built, would be hers to share with Tund. She began mentally planning her performance for later. The grief-stricken widow who lost her beloved husband in a tragic accident. She'd wear the black dress, the one Chitty had always said made her look elegant. She'd collapse at the hospital, need to be held up by friends. She'd sob at the funeral, throw herself on the coffin. She'd play the role so perfectly that no one would ever suspect. Meanwhile, Chitty drove through Lagos traffic, windows down, music playing, completely unaware that he was driving a death trap. He thought about his blessings, about his beautiful wife waiting at home for him, about how lucky he was. He had no idea that every kilometer he drove brought him closer to what was meant to be his end. He had no idea that the woman he'd just kissed goodbye had been meticulously planning his murder. He had no idea that his brakes, which felt fine now on the flat Lagos roads, would fail completely on the steep mountain descent into Enugu. All he knew was that he was happy, blessed, and deeply in love with his wife. And that ignorance, that trust, that complete and utter faith in the woman who'd vowed to love him until death do them part, was exactly what she counted on. As Chitty's car merged onto the highway heading east, Amara began her day as if nothing extraordinary was about to happen. She went to the salon, got her nails done, chatted with friends. She made sure to be seen, to have an alibi, to establish that she was a normal wife going about her normal day, worried only about her husband's safe travels. By afternoon, she was at lunch with friends, checking her phone every few minutes with what appeared to be loving concern. Chitty should be getting close to Enugu by now, she told him. I hope the traffic wasn't too bad. What she didn't say was that she was waiting for a different call entirely. The call that would change everything. The call that would make her a widow. The call that would set her free. Is Chitty's suspicion justified, or is he being paranoid? What would you do if you suspected your spouse was planning something sinister? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see what Chitty discovers next. The highway stretched before Chitty like a ribbon of possibilities, and for the first 3 hours of the drive, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced in months. Amara had been right. He needed this break desperately. The stress of the business negotiations, the constant phone calls, the endless decisions, it all felt distant now, left behind in Lagos traffic. He'd called Amara twice already, just as promised, once from the rest stop and again near Benin City. Each time, she'd sounded warm and encouraging, telling him to drive safely, to take his time, to enjoy the journey. Each time, his heart had swelled with love for her thoughtfulness. What Chitty didn't know was that after each call, Amara had immediately texted Tun with updates on his location, tracking his progress toward his doom like a hunter tracking prey. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent as Chitty approached the Okigwe-Enugu Expressway, and his mood was excellent. He sang along to the old-school R&B playing on his stereo, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, and thought about how he'd surprise Amara with something special when he returned. Maybe a weekend getaway to Dubai, or that diamond bracelet she'd been admiring. She deserved it for always taking such good care of him. The highway began to climb, winding through hills that would soon give way to the steep descent into Enugu. Chitty had driven this route dozens of times over the years. He knew these roads, knew the sharp curves, knew where the dangerous sections were. He was a careful driver, always had been. But careful driving wouldn't save him from what was about to happen. As his car crested the hill and began the long, winding descent, Chitty felt a surge of joy. Almost there. In another hour, he'd be at the family land, walking the property, breathing in the fresh air of his ancestral home. He pressed lightly on the accelerator, letting gravity assist his descent. That's when he first noticed something was wrong. The car was picking up speed slightly faster than normal. Nothing dramatic, nothing that immediately triggered alarm, but something felt off. Chitty instinctively pressed the brake pedal to slow down before the first sharp curve. Nothing happened. His foot pressed down, but there was no resistance, no response. The brake pedal went straight to the floor with a sickening, empty feeling. For a split second, Chitty's brain refused to process what was happening. He pumped the pedal again. Once, twice, 3 times. Still nothing. The car continued to accelerate down the slope, gaining momentum with every passing second. No, 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 Chitty muttered, his heart beginning to race. He pumped the brakes again, harder this time, desperate. The pedal flopped uselessly, and the speedometer needle climbed higher. 50 kilometers per hour. 60. 70. The first curve was approaching fast. Too fast. Chitty's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. His mind raced through his options. The emergency brake. Yes. He reached for it, yanked it up hard. There was a moment of hope as he felt some resistance, but the car was going too fast. The emergency brake doing almost nothing to slow the deadly acceleration. God help me, Chitty whispered, his voice shaking. He tried to downshift, forcing the transmission into a lower gear, hearing the engine scream in protest. It helped, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The car was still accelerating down the steep grade, and the curves ahead were sharp, unforgiving. Chitty's training and instincts took over. He couldn't stop the car, but maybe he could control it. He navigated the first curve by sheer will and skill, the tires squealing, the car sliding dangerously close to the edge where the road dropped off into a steep valley. His heart hammered in his chest, so hard he thought it might burst. Please, 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 he chanted, not even sure what he was praying for anymore. Survival, a miracle, anything. The speedometer read 90 kilometers per hour now, and there was another curve ahead, sharper than the first. Chitty knew, with a terrible, sickening certainty, that he wouldn't make it. Not at this speed, not with no brakes. He had seconds to decide. Take the curve and almost certainly flip the car over the edge into the valley below, or aim for something that might stop him. Through his panic, he spotted it, a concrete barrier on the inner side of the road, installed to prevent landslides from blocking traffic. It was a terrible choice, but it was the only choice. Amara, I'm sorry, Chitty said aloud, thinking of his wife, thinking this might be his last thought. I love you. He cranked the steering wheel hard to the right, aiming for the barrier. The car responded, veering across the lane. For a heartbeat. Chitty thought he might have misjudged it, that he'd overcorrected and would go over the opposite edge instead. Then the world exploded. The front of the Mercedes slammed into the concrete barrier at 95 kilometers per hour. The sound was catastrophic, metal crushing, glass shattering, airbags exploding. Chitty's body was thrown forward against the seatbelt, which locked and held him, but the force was tremendous. His head snapped forward, then back, then forward again as the car crumpled like paper. But the nightmare wasn't over. The impact didn't stop the car. It deflected it. The Mercedes spun away from the barrier, now completely out of control, rotating across the highway. It struck the far barrier, flipped onto its side, then rolled. Once, twice, 3 times. Each roll was a chaos of breaking glass, twisting metal, and Chitty's body being thrown against the seatbelt, and then the roof, then the door, then the roof again. Inside the car, Chitty's world became a kaleidoscope of pain and confusion. He felt ribs break, felt something sharp slice across his forehead, felt his left arm twist at an impossible angle, felt his chest compress as something heavy, maybe the steering column, pushed into it. And then, finally, mercifully, the car came to rest on its roof at the bottom of a shallow embankment, steam rising from the shattered engine, fluids leaking onto the dirt. For a long moment, there was only silence and smoke. Chitty hung upside down in his seatbelt, blood dripping into his eyes from a gash on his forehead. Every breath was agony. Something was broken inside. He could feel it. His left arm hung at a wrong angle, useless and screaming with pain. He tried to move, and a sharp, stabbing sensation in his chest made him cry out. Help, he tried to say, but it came out as barely a whisper. Someone help? His vision was blurring, darkening at the edges. He could taste blood in his mouth. His phone, where was his phone? He needed to call Amara. Needed to tell her what happened. Needed to hear her voice one more time before. Before what? Before he died here, trapped in twisted metal on the side of a highway? No, he had too much to live for. His children, his business. Amara, beautiful Amara, waiting for him at home. Through the cracked windshield, Chitty could see other cars stopping on the highway above. People were running toward him, shouting. Help was coming. He just needed to hold on. Sir, can you hear me? A man's voice, urgent and concerned. Help, Chitty managed to say, louder this time. Can't breathe. Don't move. We're calling an ambulance. Just hold on. Chitty wanted to tell them about the brakes, about how they'd failed, about how this wasn't his fault. But forming words was becoming harder. The darkness at the edges of his vision was spreading, creeping inward like a tide he couldn't fight. His last conscious thought was of Amara. He hoped someone would call her soon. She'd be so worried when he didn't arrive on time. She'd be terrified when she heard about the accident. He had no idea that at that exact moment, 200 kilometers away in Lagos, Amara was sitting in her bedroom, phone in hand, waiting for exactly this call, waiting to hear that her plan had worked, waiting to become a widow. Tun Badma sat in a beer parlor in Surlir, his own phone clutched in his sweaty palm. He positioned someone, a courier he'd paid cash, on the Enugu highway to watch for signs of an accident. The man had instructions to call the moment he saw anything involving a black Mercedes sedan. The call came at 4:47 p.m. It happened, the courier said, his voice shaky. Bad accident on the Okigwe-Enugu descent. Mercedes sedan completely destroyed. They're bringing out the driver now, but, boss, it doesn't look good. There's a lot of blood. Tun's heart raced with excitement he fought to contain. Is he dead? I can't tell for sure, but, boss, nobody survives a crash like that. The car rolled multiple times. It's completely mangled. Okay, good. Don't say anything to anyone. Throw away that phone and forget this call ever happened. Tun ended the call and immediately texted Amara. News coming soon. Prepare yourself. It's done. Then he sat back, ordered another beer, and waited. Within the hour, there would be official calls to the police, to the hospital, to Amara. The machinery of tragedy would begin to turn, and by the end of it, he and Amara would be free. Free and rich. He allowed himself a small smile. After 3 years of humiliation, being fired by Chitty, being exposed as a thief, losing everything, revenge was finally his, and it tasted so sweet. The call came to Amara at 5:23 p.m. She was in her living room, dressed in casual clothes, a fashion magazine open on her lap that she hadn't actually been reading. When her phone rang with an unknown number, her heart leaped. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. Hello? She answered, her voice carefully neutral. Is this Mrs. Amara Okonkwo? A formal male voice asked. Yes, this is she. Her heart was pounding now, adrenaline surging through her veins. Ma, this is Sergeant Okoro from the Anambra State Police Command. I'm calling about your husband, Chidi Okonkwo. Amara took a deep breath. Prepare herself, and then let performance begin. What about him? What's happened? Is he okay? Her voice rose with each question, perfectly calibrated panic. Ma, there's been an accident. Your husband's vehicle was involved in a serious crash on the Enugu highway. He's been taken to the National Orthopedic Hospital in Enugu. Ma, I think you should. Amara didn't let him finish. She let out a scream, sharp, agonized, authentic sounding, and the phone clattered from her hand to the floor. She bent over, hands over her face, making sobbing sounds that any neighbor within earshot would hear. Mrs. Adelik from next door came rushing over within minutes. Having heard the scream, she found Amara on the floor, phone beside her, seemingly hysterical. Amara, what's wrong? What happened? Chitty! Amara wailed, pointing at the phone. Accident. They said accident. Oh, God, is he alive? Did they say if he's alive? Mrs. Adelik picked up the phone, but the line was dead. She helped Amara to the couch, where Amara continued her performance. Crying, shaking, hyperventilating. It was perfect. Everyone who saw her would remember this moment, would testify to her devastation. We need to call them back. Find out what happened, Mrs. Adelik said, trying to be practical while comforting the seemingly distraught woman. Amara nodded frantically, found the number in her recent calls, and dialed with shaking hands. When the sergeant answered again, she composed herself just enough to be coherent. Please tell me my husband is alive, she begged, tears streaming down her face, real tears summoned from her stress and anticipation. Ma, he's alive, the sergeant said, and Amara's heart sank even as she feigned relief. But he's in critical condition. The doctors are working on him now. Ma, the injuries are severe. You should come as soon as possible. I'm coming. I'm leaving right now. Amara sobbed. Tell him I'm coming. Tell him to hold on. Tell him I love him. She ended the call and turned to Mrs. Adelik. I have to go to Enugu. I have to get to the hospital. He's alive, but, oh God, they said critical condition. What does that mean? Is he dying? Mrs. Adelik helped Amara pack a quick bag, call Amara's brother to arrange transportation. And within an hour, Amara was in a car speeding toward Enugu, her face a perfect mask of fear and worry. But inside, behind the tears and the trembling, Amara was furious. He's alive. The thought repeated in her mind like a curse. He's alive. Critical condition, yes, but alive. She texted Tund in the car. He survived. Going to hospital now. What do we do? His response came quickly. Stay calm. Critical means he might not make it anyway. And if he does, we'll find another way. Don't panic. Amara stared out the window as the car raced through the evening darkness, her mind working through scenarios. If Chitty was unconscious, if he had head trauma, maybe he wouldn't remember anything. Maybe the brake failure would be rule mechanical failure, bad luck, an accident. Or maybe he would die tonight despite surviving the initial crash. People died from internal injuries all the time, even after making it to the hospital. She found herself hoping for the second option. It would be cleaner, easier, less complicated. But if he survived, well, she'd cross that bridge when she came to it. At the National Orthopedic Hospital in Enugu, Chitty was fighting for his life. The emergency team had worked frantically to stabilize him at the accident scene before the ambulance rushed him to the hospital. His injuries were extensive. Multiple broken ribs, one of which had punctured his lung, causing a pneumothorax. Severe head trauma with concussion and a skull fracture, a compound fracture of his left arm. Internal bleeding from a lacerated spleen, and countless lacerations and contusions. Dr. Nwosu, the trauma surgeon on duty, shook her head as she reviewed the imaging results. It's a miracle he's alive at all, she told her team. Get him into surgery now. We need to stop the bleeding and repair that lung, or we'll lose him. Chitty was unconscious, his body in shock, his life hanging by a thread as they wheeled him into the operating room. The surgical team worked through the night, repairing, stitching, stabilizing. It was touch and go for hours. At 2:14 a.m., Amara arrived at the hospital. She perfected her devastated white persona during the long drive, and now she rushed into the emergency department looking appropriately disheveled and terrified. My husband, Chidi Okonkwo, where is he? Is he alive? She cried to the nurse at the desk. Ma, he's in surgery. The doctor will update you as soon as possible. Please, have a seat in the waiting area. Surgery? What kind of surgery? How bad is it? Amara's voice climbed higher. Please, someone tell me something. A nurse led her to a private waiting area, brought her water, tried to calm her. Amara sat, hands twisting in her lap, maintaining her mask of anguish. Other family members began to arrive. Chitty's cousins from nearby, alerted by the police. They found Amara looking small and broken, and they surrounded her with comfort and support. He's strong, one cousin assured her. Chitty is a fighter. He'll make it through this. Amara nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. He has to. I can't lose him. He's my everything. At 4:52 a.m., Dr. Nwosu emerged from surgery, still in her scrubs, fatigue evident on her face. Amara jumped up, and the doctor's expression told her what she needed to know before any words were spoken. He's alive, Dr. Nwosu said, and Amara forced herself to look relieved rather than disappointed. We've stabilized him, stopped the internal bleeding, reinflated his lung. But Mrs. Okonkwo, I need to be honest with you. The next 48 hours are critical. He has a severe head injury, and we won't know the full extent of potential brain damage until he wakes up. If he wakes up. If, Amara whispered, and this time her hope was real. He might not wake up. He's in a coma right now, the doctor explained gently. His brain swelling is significant. We've done everything we can, but now we have to wait and see. His body needs time to heal. He might wake up tomorrow or next week, or... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Or not at all. I'm sorry I can't give you better news. Amara covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with what everyone interpreted as sobs of despair. In reality, she was calculating. A coma, brain damage. These were complications she could work with. Can I see him? She asked, her voice muffled by her hands. Yes, but only for a few minutes. He's in the ICU, heavily sedated. Dr. Nwosu led Amara to the intensive care unit, where Chitty lay in a bed surrounded by machines, tubes running into his arms, a ventilator helping him breathe. His head was bandaged, his face swollen. and discolored with bruises, his left arm in a heavy cast elevated on a pillow. He looked like death. Amara approached the bed slowly, aware that nurses were watching, that she needed to maintain her performance. She took his right hand, the one without 4 lines, and brought it to her lips. "Oh, Chitty," she whispered, loud enough for the nurses to hear. "Please come back to me. Please don't leave me. I love you so much." She stayed there for the allotted 5 minutes, playing the devoted wife, while inside her mind raced through possibilities. If he died, problem solved. If he woke up with brain damage, he might not remember anything about the accident or anything suspicious before it. If he woke up fully intact, well, she'd deal with that when it happened. As she was led back to the waiting room, Amara's phone buzzed with a text from Tund. "Status?" She replied, "Coma, severe head trauma. Doctor says he might not make it. 48 hours will tell." "Then we wait," Tund responded, "and hope the universe finishes what we started." Amara sat in the waiting room as dawn broke over Enugu, surrounded by sympathetic family members, playing her role perfectly. The grieving wife, exhausted and terrified, clinging to hope that her beloved husband would survive. But in the deepest, darkest part of her heart, Amara was hoping for the exact opposite. She was hoping that fate would do what the fail breaks couldn't, end Chitty's life, and leave her free to claim everything he'd worked for. The sun rose on a new day, and in his ICU bed, Chitty lay unconscious, fighting a battle he didn't even know he was in. Not just a battle for his life, but the battle against a woman who'd promised to love him forever and had instead tried to kill him. And the cruelest irony was that even if he survived, even if he woke up, he still wouldn't know the truth. He'd still believe in their perfect marriage, still trust his wife completely, still have no idea that the person sitting at his bedside praying for his recovery was the same person who'd orchestrated his near death. The truth would come later. The discovery would be devastating. But for now, in this moment, Chitty remained blissfully, tragically ignorant of the betrayal that had brought him here. And Amara continued to play her role, waiting to see if she would be a grieving widow or a disappointed wife forced to try again. Chitty survived the crash, but he's hanging on by a thread. Amara thought she was free, but now she has to play the devoted wife while he fights for his life. What do you think happens next? Will he recover? Will she try again? Drop your predictions in the comments. Smash that like button and subscribe, because next chapter is where everything changes. 21 days. That's how long Chitty remained in the coma, hovering between life and death while Amara maintained her vigil at his bedside, at least when doctors and nurses were watching. During those 3 weeks, Amara perfected the role of devoted wife. She slept in the hospital room when staff were around, held Chitty's hand when people could see, and wept appropriately with an audience present. But the moment she was alone or could slip away, she was on her phone with Tund, growing increasingly frustrated that Chitty stubbornly refused to die. "His vitals keep improving," she texted Tund on day 15. "The swelling in his brain is going down. They're talking about reducing sedation soon. We need to be ready for any scenario," Tund replied. "If he wakes up with memory loss, we're safe. If he remembers everything, we adapt. And if he starts asking questions about the accident," Amara typed back, her anxiety showing through even in text, "You're his loving wife who's been by his side through everything. He'll believe whatever you tell him. Don't panic." But Amara was panicking, just beneath her composed surface. The insurance company had been calling, asking questions about the accident. The police had mentioned they were investigating the brake failure as a potential criminal matter. Someone might have tampered with the vehicle. Every day Chitty remained alive was another day the plan could unravel. On day 21, everything changed. Chitty's first conscious thought was pain. It radiated through his entire body, sharp and unrelenting. His head throbbed with an intensity that made even thinking difficult. He tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids felt impossibly heavy. "He's waking up." A female voice, urgent and excited. "Doctor, he's showing signs of consciousness." Footsteps, rapid and purposeful. More voices, clinical and professional. "Mr. Okonkwo, can you hear me? If you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand." Chitty tried to focus, tried to understand what was happening. Where was he? Why did everything hurt? He attempted to squeeze something, anything, and felt a small victory when his fingers responded. Good. That's excellent. Mr. Okonkwo, you're in the hospital. You've been in an accident, but you're safe now. Don't try to talk yet. You have a breathing tube. Just rest. An accident. The word triggered something in his foggy memory. Driving. The highway. The brakes. The brakes failed. The memory crashed into him with almost physical force. The terror of that moment, the desperate attempts to stop the car, the inevitable collision. He'd thought he was going to die. Over the next several hours, Chitty drifted in and out of consciousness as doctors worked around him. When he finally woke fully, the breathing tube had been removed and Amara was sitting beside his bed, her face a perfect mask of tearful relief. Chitty? Oh, thank God. Thank God you're awake. She took his hand gently, careful of the 4 lines. I've been so worried. The doctor said they weren't sure if you'd... Amara, Chitty croaked, his voice rough and used. What happened? You had an accident, baby, on the highway to Enugu. Your car crashed. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. You've been unconscious for 3 weeks, but you're going to be okay. The doctors say you're going to be okay. 3 weeks? Chitty's mind struggled to process this. The brakes, they failed. I know, baby. The police told me. Some kind of mechanical failure. It's a miracle you survived. Amara's voice was soft, comforting. Don't think about that now. Just focus on getting better. But Chitty couldn't stop thinking about it. As the days passed and his mind cleared, he replayed that drive over and over. The brakes had been fine when he left Lagos. The car had been fine. And then suddenly, on the steepest part of the descent, they'd failed completely. Something didn't feel right about that. Dr. Nwosu visited on his 3rd day of consciousness, checking his progress and explaining his injuries. You're remarkably lucky, Mr. Okonkwo. You had significant internal bleeding, a punctured lung, broken ribs, and a skull fracture. The fact that you're talking coherently right now is nothing short of miraculous. My arm, Chitty asked, looking at the heavy cast. Compound fracture of the ulna and radius. You'll need physical therapy, but you should regain full function eventually. Your ribs will take 6 to 8 weeks to heal fully. The lung has reinflated completely. Your head injury was the most concerning, but you seem to have avoided major cognitive damage. After the doctor left, Chitty lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind working. Amara had stepped out to get coffee, and for the first time since waking, he was alone with his thoughts. A mechanical failure, on a car that had been running perfectly just hours before, on the most dangerous part of the highway. It seemed like an incredible coincidence. His best friend Emeka visited later that day, bringing newspapers and get-well wishes from business associates. Man, we thought we'd lost you, Emeka said, clasping Chitty's good hand. Amara was devastated. She barely left her side the whole time. She's been amazing, Chitty said automatically, but his mind was elsewhere. Emeka, can you do me a favor? Anything, brother. The police report on my accident. Can you get a copy? I want to know exactly what happened to my car. Emeka's expression grew concerned. Why? Does it matter? You survived. That's what's important. I need to understand. Please. Emeka nodded slowly. Okay, I'll get it for you. 2 days later, Emeka returned with the police report. He waited until Amara had left for dinner before handing it to Chitty. Are you sure you want to read this? It's pretty detailed about the crash itself. I need to, Chitty said, taking the document with his good hand. He read through it carefully, his engineering background helping him understand the technical language. The report noted that the brake lines had suffered complete failure due to severing. The investigating officer had written, preliminary examination suggests brake lines may have been deliberately cut or damaged. Further investigation recommended. Deliberately cut. The words seemed to jump off the page. Chitty read them again, then a 3rd time, his heart beginning to pound despite his weakened state. Chitty? Emeka asked, noticing his friend's expression. What is it? The brakes were cut, Chitty said quietly. Someone cut my brake lines. What? That can't be right. Who would? I don't know, Chitty interrupted, but his mind was already racing. Who had access to his car? Who knew he was taking that trip? Who would benefit from his death? The insurance policies flashed through his mind. 50 million naira, all payable to Amara. No, that was insane. Amara loved him. She'd been at his bedside for 3 weeks. She was devastated by what happened. She would never, would she? Chitty felt sick, and not from his injuries. He was doubting his wife, the woman who'd been nothing but supportive and loving through this entire ordeal. What kind of husband did that make him? Maybe it was just a conclusion they jumped to. Emeka said, trying to be reasonable. Maybe there's a mechanical explanation that looks like tampering. Maybe, Chitty agreed, but doubt had taken root in his mind like a weed. That night, alone in his hospital room after Amara had gone home to shower and change clothes, or so she said, Chitty couldn't sleep. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't rest. He kept thinking about the weeks before the trip. Had there been any signs? Any clues he'd missed? Amara had been insistent that he take his personal car instead of the company vehicle. She'd discourage him from having it serviced before the trip. She'd insisted he go alone, drive himself. But those were just thoughtful suggestions from a caring wife, weren't they? At 2 a.m., unable to bear the uncertainty anymore, Chitty did something he never thought he would do. He asked the night nurse if he could borrow her phone. His had been destroyed in the accident, and called his lawyer, Barrister Adebayo. Chitty. The lawyer's voice was thick with sleep, but immediately concerned. Are you okay? I heard about the accident. Thank God you survived. I need you to do something for me, Chitty said quietly, keeping his voice low. And I need you to be completely discreet about it. Of course. What do you need? I want you to hire a private investigator, the best one you know. I want them to look into my accident. Specifically, I want to know who might have had access to my car in the days before I left for Enugu. There was a pause. Chitty, are you saying you think someone deliberately caused your accident? The police report says the brake lines were cut. I want to know who did it. Another pause, longer this time. Chitty, are you sure about this? This kind of investigation. It might uncover things you don't want to know. I need to know the truth, Chitty said firmly. Whatever it is. Okay, I'll make some calls tomorrow. But Chitty, be careful who you trust while we figure this out. After ending the call, Chitty lay in the darkness, feeling paranoid and disloyal and terrified all at once. If he was wrong, if he was suspecting his wife of something she didn't do, he could never take it back. The doubt alone would poison their marriage. But if he was right, he couldn't even finish the thought. It was too horrible to contemplate. The private investigator Barrister Adebayo hired was a woman named Chidima Ease, and she was very good at her job. Within 3 days, she begun uncovering threads that, when pulled, started to unravel everything. She came to the hospital 8 days after Chitty woke from his coma, requesting a meeting in private. Chitty arranged for it during one of Amara's absences. She'd gone back to Lagos for a day to check on the house and handle some business matters. Chidinma was a short, compact woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat beside Chitty's bed, opened a folder, and got straight to the point. Mr. Okonkwo, I've been investigating your case for just over a week. I need to show you some things, but I want to warn you first. What I've found is going to be difficult to hear. Chitty's mouth went dry. Just tell me. Your brake lines were definitely cut. The mechanic I had examined your vehicle confirmed it was deliberate sabotage done by someone who knew what they were doing. The cut was precise, designed to hold until you hit a steep grade and applied pressure. Who? Chitty's voice was barely a whisper. Chidima pulled out a photo. Do you know this man? Chitty stared at the image. It showed a man climbing out from under a car. His car. He recognized the license plate in what appeared to be nighttime security footage. That's Tun Badmus, my former business partner. I fired him 3 years ago for embezzling from the company. Yes, this footage is from a security camera across from your home. It was taken at 2:47 a.m. on the night, before your trip to Enugu. Chidinma paused. Mr. Okonkwo, I need to ask you something. Why would your former business partner have access to your property at that hour? He wouldn't, Chitty said, confused. We haven't spoken in 3 years. He couldn't just walk onto my property. Unless someone let him in, Chidinma finished quietly. The room seemed to tilt. Chitty gripped the bed rail with his good hand, steadying himself. What are you saying? Chidinma pulled out more photos. These showed a man and a woman at a hotel. The images were grainy but clear enough. The woman's face was visible in several shots. It was Amara. The man was Tund. They were kissing in one photo, embracing in another, entering a hotel room together in a third. These were taken over the past 6 months. Chidinma said gently, I'm sorry, Mr. Okonkwo, but your wife has been having an affair with Tun Badmus. Chitty couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The woman in those photos looked like Amara, but it couldn't be Amara. His Amara, who loved him, who'd been by his side through everything, who'd cried with relief when he woke up. There's more, Chidinma said, and Chitty almost told her to stop, that he couldn't take any more. But he needed to know. All of it. She pulled out printouts of phone records. They'd been in contact constantly. Hundreds of calls and texts over the past year. I couldn't access the content of the messages legally, but the frequency and timing are significant. Timing? Chitty managed to ask. There was a spike in communication in the 3 months before your accident. Daily contact, sometimes multiple times a day. And then there's this. She pulled out bank statements. Your wife has been transferring money to an account registered to Tund. Small amounts, irregular intervals, totaling about 2 million naira over the past year. The room was spinning now. Chitty felt like he might vomit. And finally, Chidinma said, her voice full of sympathy, there are your life insurance policies. 50 million naira, with your wife as sole beneficiary. She updated the beneficiary information 6 months ago, increased the payout from 20 million to 50 million. Everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The insistence that he take the trip alone, the discouragement of vehicle maintenance, the affectionate goodbye that seemed so loving, Tund under his car in the dead of night, the affair, the money, the insurance. They'd tried to kill him, his wife, the woman he loved more than anything, had plotted with his enemy to murder him for insurance money. Mr. Okonkwo, should I call a nurse? You've gone very pale. No, Chitty said, though he felt like his world was ending. No, I need a moment. Chidinma nodded, giving him space while remaining nearby. Chitty stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down his face, his heart shattering into pieces that he didn't know could ever be put back together. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of trust, of building a life together, of promises and dreams and plans of future. All of it had been a lie. At least the recent part had been a lie. When had it started? When had Amara stopped loving him? When had she decided he was worth more dead than alive? When had she become capable of looking him in the eye while planning his murder? What do I do? He finally asked, his voice broken. That's up to you, Chidinma said carefully. We have enough evidence to go to the police. Attempted murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud. They'd both be arrested immediately. But would it be enough to convict them? The evidence is strong, but defense lawyers are clever. They might argue that the affair doesn't prove murder conspiracy, that the brake tampering was done by Tund alone, that your wife knew nothing about it, without catching them discussing the plan directly, or catching them attempting something again. You're saying I need more evidence. I'm saying the more evidence we have, the more certain we can be that justice will be served. Right now, we have enough for arrests and probably a trial, but if you want to guarantee convictions. She trailed off, letting him complete the thought. I need to let them try again, Chitty said quietly. Let them think I suspect nothing. Let them plan another attempt and catch them in the act. That would be extremely dangerous, Chidinma warned, if something went wrong. They already tried to kill me once and almost succeeded, Chitty said, a hard edge entering his voice. I'm not afraid of them trying again. I'm afraid of them getting away with it. He looked at the photos again. at his wife's smiling face as she embraced his enemy, and felt something cold and determined settle in his chest. The heartbreak was still there, the devastating pain of betrayal, but alongside it grew something else, a fierce desire for justice. Set up surveillance in my home, he told Chidinma. Cameras, audio recording, everything. I'll have to clear it with my lawyer to make sure it's admissible in court, but I want every conversation they have recorded. And I need you to work with the police. I want them ready to move the moment we have what we need. Are you sure about this, Mr. Okonkwo? Chidi wiped his eyes, straightened his shoulders as much as his broken ribs would allow, and met Chidinma's gaze with steel in his own. My wife tried to murder me. My former partner turned my own vehicle into a death trap. They plotted my demise together, and they'll do it again if I give them the chance. So yes, I'm sure. I want them caught. I want them prosecuted. I want them to pay for what they've done. Then we'll need to plan this carefully, Chidinma said. You'll need to act normally around your wife. You'll need to pretend you trust her completely. That might be the hardest thing I've ever done, Chidi admitted. Can you do it? Chidi thought about his children, who would be devastated to learn what their mother had done. He thought about his business, everything he'd built that Amara had been willing to destroy for money. He thought about the moment of sheer terror in his car when the brakes failed, the certain knowledge that he was about to die. Yes, he said firmly. I can do it. For justice, I can do anything. That night, when Amara returned from Lagos with a bright smile and a kiss for his forehead, Chidi smiled back and told her how much he'd missed her. He listened to her chatter about home and business and their friends, and he acted like everything was fine. But inside, he was a different man than the one who'd driven away from their home 3 weeks earlier. That man had been trusting, perhaps naive, certainly in love with his wife. This man, the man who'd survived murder and discovered betrayal, was harder, colder, and absolutely determined to see justice served. I'm just so grateful you're alive, Amara said, holding his hand. I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you. I know, my love, Chidi replied, the endearment tasting like ash in his mouth. I know. And as she smiled at him with what looked like genuine affection, Chidi understood that he was now looking at a stranger wearing his wife's face. A stranger who was also a would-be murderer. The game had changed, and this time he would be the one setting the trap. Chidi is starting to suspect the unthinkable. Could his loving wife really have tried to murder him? The woman who's been crying at his bedside. Is she crying because he survived? What would you do in this situation? Tell us in the comments. Hit that like button if you're on the edge of your seat. And subscribe because next chapter reveals the shocking evidence. 2 weeks after Chidi's devastating discovery, he was finally discharged from the hospital. The doctors marveled at his recovery. His lung had healed completely. His ribs were mending well. And while he still wore a cast on his left arm and walked with a slight limp, he was mobile and alert. Amara had fussed over every detail of his homecoming, ensuring their bedroom was on the ground floor so he wouldn't have to manage stairs, arranging for a private nurse to check on him daily, and stocking the house with his favorite foods. To anyone watching, she was a picture of a devoted wife caring for her recovering husband. Only Chidi knew the truth, and the knowledge was eating him alive. During those 2 weeks, Chidinma had worked with Barrister Adebayo and Inspector Obi, Chidi's childhood friend who was now a senior officer in the Lagos State Police Command, to set up comprehensive surveillance in the Okonkwo home. Hidden cameras were installed in every room except the bathrooms. Audio recording devices were placed strategically throughout the house. Everything was legal, documented, and admissible in court. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for Amara and Tun to walk into it. Chidi's first night home was surreal. He lay in their bed, the bed he'd shared with Amara for 15 years, and felt like a stranger in his own life. Amara slept beside him, her breathing soft and steady, occasionally reaching out in her sleep to touch his shoulder gently, as if reassuring herself he was really there. Every touch felt like a lie. Every gentle gesture was poison wrapped in care. Are you comfortable, darling? She'd ask before they went to sleep. Do you need more pillows? Is the pain medication working? I'm fine, Chidi had assured her, forcing warmth into his voice. Just happy to be home with you. The smile she'd given him had seemed so genuine. How did she do it? How did she look at him with such apparent love while plotting his death? Inspector Obi had warned him this would be the hardest part. Living with someone you know tried to kill you, pretending everything is normal. It takes a special kind of strength. If at any point you feel unsafe, if you think they might try something without warning, you call me immediately. Don't try to be a hero. I understand, Chitty had replied, but I need them to incriminate themselves. I need this to be airtight. Now, lying in the darkness listening to Amara breathe, Chitty wondered if he really had the strength for this. Every instinct screamed at him to confront her, to demand answers, to let out the rage and hurt that was building inside him like a pressure cooker about to explode. But he couldn't. Not yet. Justice required patience. The first major breakthrough came on Chitty's third day home. Amara thought he was napping in the afternoon. He'd made a show of being tired, taking his pain medication, and settling into bed. But he was wide awake, listening to the baby monitor he'd secretly set up, which transmitted to a receiver hidden in his bedside table. He heard Amara's phone ring, heard her check that his door was closed, then answer. Finally, she hissed into the phone, her voice completely different from the gentle, caring tone she used with Chitty. I've been waiting for you to call. I couldn't risk it while you were at the hospital. Tun's voice came through clearly. Too many people around, too much attention. But now that he's home, baby, we need to talk about next steps. I know, Amara said, and Chitty could hear her moving, probably going further from his room, maybe into the kitchen. I can't believe he survived, Tund. The doctor said it was a miracle. He should have died. But he didn't, Tund replied, frustration clear in his voice. And now we have a problem. The police are still investigating the brake failure. They're calling it suspicious. I know. They've been asking questions. Nothing direct yet, but what if they figure out? They won't, Tund said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. We were careful. No digital communication about the plan, no witnesses, nothing that ties us to the tampering. Except you were caught on camera, Amara said, and Chitty's heart raced. She knew about the security footage, that grainy footage from across the street. I looked into it. The camera is privately owned, and the owner hasn't reported anything to police. Without someone explicitly bringing it to their attention, it's just sitting in an archive somewhere. What if someone does bring it to their attention? Then we say I was visiting you late at night, sneaking around because we were having an affair and didn't want neighbors to see. Embarrassing, yes, but not proof of attempted murder. There was a pause. Chitty strained to hear, his entire body tense. Maybe we should just wait, Amara finally said. He's weak right now, recovering. Maybe there will be complications, an infection, something. People die from accident injuries weeks or months later all the time. Or, Tund said slowly, we could help those complications along. Chitty's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Amara asked, but her tone suggested she knew exactly what he meant. He's on blood thinners, right? For clot prevention after the surgery. Yes, but... And he's on pain medication. Strong pain medication that can cause drowsiness, confusion, loss of balance. Tund, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Tund said deliberately, that your husband is recovering from severe injuries. He's unsteady on his feet. He's on medication that affects his balance. If he were to fall, say, down those beautiful marble stairs in your house, in his weakened state, with blood thinners in his system, even a relatively minor fall could cause catastrophic bleeding, especially if he hit his head again. The silence that followed was deafening. Chitty lay in his bed, barely breathing, waiting for Amara to reject this monstrous suggestion, to say it was too far, too dangerous, too evil. When? She finally asked, and Chitty's world crumbled a little more. Soon, Tund replied, before he gets too much stronger, before the police investigation goes any further. We need to finish this. Amara, how would we even... I can't just push him down the stairs. Someone would know. You don't push him. You create an opportunity for an accident. Oil on the stairs, a rug position just wrong, his medication adjusted, so he's more drowsy than usual. And maybe I'm there hidden to make sure the fall is conclusive. You mean to make sure he dies. I mean to ensure we finally get what we've been working toward for months. Freedom, money, a life together without him in a way. Another terrible pause. Then, I need to think about this. Don't think too long, Tun warned. Every day he's alive is another day this could all fall apart. The police, the insurance investigation, his own suspicions. We're running out of time. He doesn't suspect anything, Amara said quickly. He's been nothing but grateful and loving since he woke up. Are you sure? You need to be absolutely certain he doesn't suspect. I'm sure. He trusts me completely. He always has. The bitterness in her voice when she said that was like a knife to Chitty's heart. She resented his trust. She'd used it as a weapon against him. Okay, Tun said, but we need to move forward soon. This week. I'll come by tomorrow night when he's sleeping. We'll plan exactly how to do this. Tomorrow night? Amara sounded nervous. The longer we wait, the more risk. Tomorrow night, late. I'll text you when I'm outside. You let me in through the back. We'll plan it all out, and then we execute within 48 hours. Okay, Amara whispered. Okay, tomorrow night. They said their goodbyes, sickeningly sweet, full of professions of love and promises of their future together. And Amara ended the call. Chitty heard her footsteps approaching his room. He quickly closed his eyes, arranged his features into peaceful sleep, and regulated his breathing. The door opened softly, and he sensed her standing there, watching him. Sleep well, Chitty, she whispered. Soon all this will be over. She had no idea how right she was. The moment Chitty was certain Amara had left the house, she'd said she was going to market, would be gone for at least an hour. He called Inspector Obi. They're planning to try again, he said without preamble. Tomorrow night, Tund is coming to the house to finalize the plan, and they're going to stage another accident within 48 hours after that. We've got the conversation recorded. Obi asked. Every word. The surveillance system caught it all. That's excellent, but Chitty, I'm concerned about your safety. If they're planning an attempt this week, then we need to be ready to catch them in the act. Chitty interrupted. You said the evidence needed to be ironclad. Well, here's our chance. Let Tun come tomorrow night. Record their planning session. And then when they make their move, you and your team move in. Chitty, if something goes wrong. It won't. You'll have officers stationed nearby, ready to intervene. Multiple cameras recording everything. At the first sign of actual danger, you storm in, right? There was a long pause. Right, but I don't like this. We're using you as bait. I'm bait that knows the trap exists, Chitty pointed out. That gives me an advantage they don't expect. Plus, I have you and your entire team watching my back. They have arrogance and greed. I know which side I bet on. All right, Inspector Obi finally agreed, but we're going to plan this down to the last detail. No improvisation, no heroics. You follow the plan exactly, or I'm pulling the plug on the whole operation. Agreed. That evening, Barrister Adebayo came to the house under the pretense of discussing business matters while Amara was out visiting friends. He brought with him detailed plans for the next 48 hours. The house is fully wired, he explained, showing Chitty a schematic. Every conversation will be recorded with perfect audio quality. Cameras have clear sight lines of all major areas. Inspector Obi will have a tactical team stationed 2 streets over, ready to respond within 90 seconds of the signal. What's the signal? Chitty asked. 3 words. I need help. Say that, and the team moves in immediately. If for any reason you can't speak, there's a panic button. He handed Chitty a small device that looked like a car key fob. Press this. Same result. Chitty pocketed the device. And the plan for tomorrow night when Tun comes over? You'll be asleep upstairs, heavily medicated, out cold. At least that's what Amara will think. In reality, you'll be alert and listening. We want them to feel comfortable enough to discuss their plan in detail. The more specific they get about how they plan to kill you, the stronger our case becomes. And when they actually make their attempt, that's where it gets delicate, Adebayo said seriously. We need them to commit to the action, but stop them before any actual harm occurs. It's a narrow window, Inspector Obi assures me his team is trained for exactly this kind of operation, but Chitty, there's risk involved. I understand. Do you? Because if they move faster than anticipated, if something unexpected happens, you could be seriously injured or killed before the police can intervene. Chitty met his lawyer's eyes steadily. They've already tried to kill me once. They almost succeeded. I died on that highway, in a way. The old Chitty, the trusting husband who believed in his fairy tale marriage, he died in that crash. The man sitting here now, I want justice. I want them to pay for what they've done. And I'm willing to take the risk to make that happen. Adebayo sighed. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Chitty admitted. The next night arrived with agonizing slowness. Chitty had spent the day playing his role perfectly. The recovering invalid, grateful for his wife's care, trusting and vulnerable. Amara had been attentive and sweet, bringing him meals, adjusting his pillows, asking about his pain levels. I think I'll take the strong medication tonight, Chitty said at dinner, playing his part. My ribs have been really bothering me today. That medication knocks me out, but at least I'll sleep through the pain. That's probably a good idea, darling, Amara said, and was that eagerness in her voice? You need your rest to heal. At 9 p.m., Chitty made a show of taking his medication, actually just a placebo that Barrister Adebayo had provided, and heading to bed. I'll probably be out cold until morning, he told Amara, kissing her cheek. Don't worry about checking on me. I don't want you losing sleep because of me. I don't mind, Amara said, but relief flickered across her face. But, okay, rest well, my love. Chitty lay in bed, lights off, door closed. His phone was on silent, earbuds in, connected to the surveillance feed that Chidinma was monitoring from a van 3 streets away. He could hear every sound in the house. At 11:47 p.m., Amara's phone buzzed. A text from Tun. Outside, Chitty heard Amara move through the house, heard the back door open quietly, heard footsteps entering. 2 sets now. Is he asleep? Tun's voice low and cautious. Dead to the world, Amara replied. I watched him take the medication. He'll be unconscious for at least 6 hours. Good. Let's go to the kitchen, further from his room. They moved, and Chitty heard chairs scraping as they sat down at the kitchen table. His heart was pounding so hard he worried they might somehow hear it, even though he was upstairs and they were downstairs. Okay, Tun said. Let's plan this out step by step. For the next 40 minutes, Chitty listened in horror as his wife and her lover meticulously planned his murder. They discussed in detail how they would apply oil to specific steps on the marble staircase. Not all of them, just enough to ensure a fall, but not so much it would be obviously suspicious. They discussed adjusting his medication dosage to make him drowsier, more unsteady. They discussed the timing. Tomorrow afternoon, when the maid was off duty and no witnesses would be present. And most chillingly, they discussed Tun's role. I'll hide in the guest room, Tun explained. When you get him to the top of the stairs, tell him you need help with something downstairs. Whatever excuse works, I'll wait. As he starts down and hits the oil, when he starts to fall, I'll make sure he falls hard. A push, quick and clean. Then I disappear out the back before anyone arrives. And if he survives the fall? Amara asked, with the oil, the stairs, the push, and his current condition? He won't. But if somehow he does, you call emergency services hysterical, sobbing. You try to catch him, but couldn't. It all happened so fast. You're devastated. And then at the hospital, if he's still alive but critical, well, accidents happen in hospitals too. Medication mix-ups, equipment failures. You've really thought this through, Amara said, and she sounded impressed rather than horrified. I've had 3 years to plan revenge on the man who destroyed my career and humiliated me, Tun said bitterly, and 6 months to plan it with you. Yes, I've thought it through. Tomorrow, we finish this. Tomorrow, we're finally free. Tomorrow, Amara agreed. And then the insurance money? You'll be a grieving widow. You'll wait a respectable few months before we're seen together publicly. Within a year, we'll be married, living in Abuja or maybe abroad. 50 million naira can buy us a very comfortable life. To our future, Amara said, and Chitty heard the clink of glasses. Were they actually toasting his planned murder with his own wine? They talked for another 20 minutes, finalizing details, and then Tun left the way he came, through the back door, slipping away into the night. Amara checked on Chitty one more time, and he feigned deep sleep, his breathing slow and regular even though his mind was racing. She stood in his doorway for a long moment. "I'm sorry it has to be this way," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. "But you were never going to be enough for me. Your money, your life, your business. That's enough. But you're just the price I have to pay to get it all." She closed the door softly, and Chitty heard her go to her own room. She'd been sleeping separately, claiming she didn't want to disturb his rest with her tossing and turning in his room. Chitty removed his earbuds and stared at the ceiling, emotions warring inside him. Rage, hurt, betrayal, but also something colder and harder, determination. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Inspector Obi. "Tomorrow afternoon, 2 to 3 p.m. window. They'll make their move then." Recording as all the details. The response came quickly. "We'll be ready. Stay safe, brother." Chitty set the phone down and tried to sleep, though he knew it would be impossible. Tomorrow, the trap would close. Tomorrow, justice would finally be served. Tomorrow, Amara and Tun would discover that the man they thought they'd broken was actually the one who'd been 3 steps ahead all along. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Amara was especially attentive, bringing Chitty breakfast in bed, helping him to the bathroom, chatting pleasantly about mundane things. She was a phenomenal actress. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she was hours away from attempting murder. Around 1 p.m., she suggested Chitty try coming downstairs for lunch. "It would be good for you to practice the stairs," she said sweetly. "Build your strength back up. I'll be right beside you to help." "Maybe later," Chitty said, following the script Inspector Obi had given him. "I'm still feeling a bit shaky. Maybe this afternoon, when I've had more rest." "Of course, darling. Whenever you're ready." She went downstairs, and Chitty heard her in the kitchen. He knew what she was doing, preparing the stairs, applying the oil to specific steps, setting the trap. Every movement was being recorded on multiple cameras. At 2:15 p.m., Amara came back upstairs. "Chitty, I hate to bother you, but I need your help with something. The shelf in the pantry collapsed, and I can't lift it back alone. Would you mind coming down? I'll support you the whole way." This was it, the moment they'd been planning for. Chitty sat up slowly, playing the part of a weakened man who was trying his best. "Of course, my love. Let me get my bearings." He stood carefully, and Amara was immediately at his side, her arm around his waist. "Lean on me. We'll take it slow." They moved toward the stairs, and Chitty's heart was racing. Inspector Obi and his team were in position. Chidinma was monitoring every camera. The plan was for Chitty to make it halfway down the stairs before calling for help, allowing the police to intervene before he actually fell or before Tun could attack. But as they reached the top of the stairs, Chitty saw the oil gleaming on several steps. It was more than Amara and Tun had discussed. She'd been thorough. If he actually slipped on that, with his still healing ribs and the blood thinners in his system, the fall really could kill him. "Careful now," Amara said, her voice loving and concerned. Step by step, they started down. Chitty could see the guest room door closed, but he knew Tun was behind it, waiting to strike. 3 more steps until he reached the oiled section. 2 steps. 1 step. His foot touched the oil and immediately lost traction. Chitty's eyes widened. The slip was real, unavoidable. He wasn't acting anymore. He was actually falling. In that split second, several things happened at once. The guest room door flew open, and Tun emerged, his hand reaching out to shove Chitty down the rest of the stairs. Chitty grabbed the railing with his good hand, stopping his fall but leaving himself vulnerable to Tun's push. And Amara, rather than try to catch him, actually stepped back away from him, making sure she wouldn't be brought down in his fall. But before Tun's hand could make contact, before Chitty could fall, before Amara could complete her betrayal, the front door crashed open. "Police, freeze. Hands where we can see them." Inspector Obi and 4 other officers stormed in, weapons drawn. Two more came through the back door, trapping Tun, who tried to run. It was over in seconds. Tun face down on the floor, hands cupped behind his back, Amara against the wall, being read her rights, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. Chitty stood on the stairs, still gripping the railing, his heart hammering, barely able to process that it was over. He was safe. They were caught. Justice was happening. Inspector Obi helped him down the remaining stairs, carefully avoiding the oil. "Are you all right?" "I am now," Chitty said, his voice shaking slightly. "Thank you, if you'd been even 10 seconds later." "But we weren't," Obi said firmly. "We got them, brother. We got them both." Chitty turned to look at Amara, who was being handcuffed by a female officer. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, the mask dropped. He saw the real her, not the loving wife, not the concerned partner, but the cold, calculating woman who'd plotted his death for money. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice flat. "Long enough," Chitty replied. "Long enough to hear every word of your plans. Long enough to watch you and your lover plot my murder in my own home. Long enough to gather all the evidence needed to ensure you both spend the next 25 years in prison." Amara's face crumbled. "Chitty, please, I can explain. It wasn't supposed to—" "Save it for your lawyer," Inspector Obi interrupted. "Amara Okonkwo, Tun Badmus, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and criminal property damage. You have the right to remain silent." As the arrest continued, as Amara and Tun were led out to separate police vehicles, as neighbors gathered on the street, wondering what was happening, Chitty sank onto his couch and finally let himself feel the enormity of what had just occurred. He'd survived. They'd failed. Justice was being served. But the cost, the emotional devastation of discovering his wife's betrayal, the death of his marriage, the shattering of 15 years of what he thought was love, that cost was almost too much to bear. Chidinma approached him, her expression sympathetic. "We have everything on camera, Mr. Okonkwo. The planning session last night, the preparation of the stairs today, the attempted assault, combined with the evidence of the brake tampering, the affair, the insurance policies. This case is airtight. They won't be able to deny anything." "Good," Chitty said numbly. "That's good." Barrister Adebayo arrived shortly after, having been monitoring the operation from his office. "Chitty, you did it. It's over. You're safe, and they're going to pay for what they did." "I know," Chitty said. I can't quite believe it's real. That she really did all this. That the woman I loved." "I'm sorry," Adebayo said sincerely. "I know this isn't the outcome you wanted. You wanted to be wrong about her." "More than anything," Chitty admitted, tears finally falling. "I would have given anything to be wrong." But he wasn't wrong. The evidence was undeniable. The recordings were clear. His wife and her lover had tried to kill him, not once, but twice. And now they would face the consequences of their actions. As the sun set on this terrible day, Chitty sat in his living room, surrounded by police officers, lawyers, and the remnants of his shattered life, and knew that while he'd won this battle, the war against the pain of betrayal was only beginning. But he'd survived. Against all odds, he'd survived. And that, for now, was enough. The evidence is devastating. Amara and Tund are planning to finish what they started. They want Chitty dead for 50 million Nigerian nairas. But now, Chitty knows everything. What should he do? Confront them or catch them in the act? Drop your answer in the comments. Smash that like button if you want justice. And subscribe for the explosive final chapter where Chitty strikes back. The police station was a flurry of activity. In separate interrogation rooms, Amara and Tun were learning that their perfect crime had been anything but perfect. Faced with overwhelming evidence, video recordings of their planning session, audio of their phone conversations, security footage of Tun tamper with the car, forensic evidence from both crime scenes and Chitty's testimony, their stories began to unravel immediately. Chitty sat in Inspector Obi's office, watching through one-way glass as Amara was questioned. She still looked beautiful, even in handcuffs and a prison-issue jumpsuit. But the woman he'd loved was truly gone, if she'd ever existed at all. "She's asking for you," Inspector Obi said quietly. "Want to talk to you alone." "You don't have to, of course." Chitty considered this. Part of him wanted to refuse, to never speak to her again. But another part, the part that had loved her for 15 years, needed closure. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I can handle. They brought Amara to a conference room, her lawyer present, everything being recorded. When Chitty entered, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes, and for a moment he saw a flash of the woman he'd married. "Thank you for seeing me," she said softly. Chitty sat across from her, maintaining distance. "You have 5 minutes. What do you want to say?" I don't even know where to start." She looked down at her cuffed hands. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, that it can never be enough, but I am sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" Chitty asked, his voice hard. Amara flinched. Sorry I let it get this far. It wasn't supposed to." She stopped herself. "No, that's not true. I made choices. Every step of the way, I made choices." "When did it start?" Chitty asked. "When did you decide I was worth more dead than alive?" "It wasn't like that," Amara said, then caught herself again. "No, I suppose it was exactly like that. Tun came back into my life about 18 months ago. I ran into him at a restaurant. We started talking, and he was so charming. He made me feel young again, exciting. You were always working, always focused on the business, and I felt invisible. So you had an affair." "Yes, and at first, that's all it was. But then Tun started talking about the life we could have together if only you weren't in the picture. He reminded me how much the business was worth, how much the insurance policies were worth. He made it sound so simple, so easy." "Murder," Chitty said flatly. "He made murder sound easy." Amara closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I told myself it would be quick, painless, that you wouldn't suffer. I told myself a lot of lies to justify what I was doing. Did you ever love me?" Chitty asked, the question he'd been dreading. Was any of it real? Amara met his eyes, and in that moment, she gave him the only honest thing she probably could. "I did love you once, when we were young, when we were building our life together. You were kind and ambitious, and believed in me when no one else did. But somewhere along the way, I fell out of love, and instead of being honest about it, instead of just asking for a divorce, I let Tun convince me there was another way, a way that involved killing me and taking everything I'd worked for." "Yes," she whispered, "and I will never forgive myself for that. I know you won't forgive me either. I know our children will hate me. I know I'll spend the next 2 decades in prison. I know all of that. But I needed you to hear this from me. I am sorry. I'm sorry I betrayed you. I'm sorry I tried to take your life. I'm sorry I destroyed our family." Chitty sat silently for a moment, processing her words. Part of him had hoped for a different explanation, some mitigating circumstance that would make sense of the senseless. But there wasn't one, just greed, selfishness, and poor choices compounded over months. "In the hospital," he said finally, "when I was in the coma, were you really hoping I would die?" Amara's silence was answer enough. "And when I woke up," he pressed, "when you held my hand and cried tears of relief, was any of that real?" "No," Amara admitted, her voice breaking. "I was disappointed, frustrated, scared the plan had failed. Every minute you were alive was another minute the truth might come out." Chitty stood up, his 5 minutes ending. "I came here hoping to understand how the woman I loved could do this to me. But I realize now that woman never existed. Or maybe she did once, but she's been gone for a long time. I was just too blind to see it. Chitty, please." "Goodbye, Amara," he said, turned to leave. "I hope prison gave you time to figure out who you really are. Because the woman who could plot her husband's murder twice? I never knew her at all." He walked out without looking back. And this time, the door closing behind him felt final. In the other interrogation room, Tun's response to being caught was very different from Amara's. Where she showed remorse, genuine or performative, he showed defiance. "You can't prove I cut those brake lines," he insisted to detectives. "So I was on his property that night. I was visiting Amara. We were having an affair. That's not illegal. The security footage shows you under his vehicle, Detective Audiola pointed out. I dropped my phone, was looking for it in the dark. Coincidence. And the oil on the stairs? I wasn't even in the house when that happened. We have you on video coming out of the guest room as Mr. Okonkwo started to fall. Detective Adeola said calmly, "We have audio recording of you and Mrs. Okonkwo planning the murder. We have your phone records showing hundreds of communications with her. We have bank records showing she was giving you money. Mr. Badmus, we have everything. Your lawyer is going to tell you the same thing. You should consider cooperating." Tun's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender, leaned over to whisper in his client's ear. Tun's face went through several expressions: denial, anger, calculation, and finally, defeated acceptance. "What kind of deal are we talking about?" he finally asked. "That depends on what you're willing to tell us," Detective Adeola said. "Who initiated the murder plan? How long had you been planning it? Were there other attempts we don't know about?" What followed was a confession that painted an even darker picture than the evidence alone had shown. Tun admitted that the murder plot had been his idea from the beginning, that he'd seduced Amara specifically because she was Chitty's wife, that his motivation was equal parts greed and revenge for being fired and exposed as an embezzler years ago. He described other ideas they considered: poisoning, stage robbery gone wrong, faking Chitty's suicide, before settling on a brake tampering as the most likely to succeed and least likely to be traced back to them. He admitted that when the first attempt failed and Chitty survived, he'd immediately started planning attempt number 2, convinced that finishing the job quickly was their only option. If we just waited a few more months, let things cool down, we might have gotten away with it, Tun said bitterly. But Amara was panicking, worried the police would figure it out. She pushed for the second attempt. Ironic, isn't it? Our rush to finish the job is what got us caught. So you're blaming Mrs. Okonkwo for the failure? Detective Adeola asked. I'm saying we're both responsible, Tun said. But if you're offering a deal in exchange for testimony against her, yeah, I'll tell you everything. She was more involved than she's probably admitting. This wasn't a poor wife manipulated by her lover. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she wanted it just as much as I did. His cooperation would ultimately prove unnecessary. The recorded evidence was more than sufficient for conviction, but it did provide insight into just how calculated and cold-blooded the conspiracy had been. The trial came 6 months later. In the interim, Chitty had filed for divorce uncontested, given the circumstances, informed his children, who were devastated but supported their father, and began the long process of emotional healing. His son, Chikwudi, had flown home from university in the UK immediately upon hearing the news. His daughter, Adiz, came from the U.S. Both were shocked, angry, and heartbroken to learn what their mother had done. I can't believe it, Adiz said, tears streaming down her face as Chitty told him the full story. Mom tried to kill you? Our mother? I can't believe it either, Chitty admitted. But the evidence is undeniable. I'm sorry you have to learn this about her. Don't apologize, Dad, Chikwudi said fiercely. You're the victim here. She's the one who should be sorry. She's the one who destroyed this family. They asked if they could visit their mother in jail before the trial. Chitty didn't stand in their way, though he warned them to prepare for a difficult conversation. Both children came back from those visits visibly shaken, their illusions about their perfect family permanently shattered. She tried to justify it. Adiz reported disbelief in her voice, said she felt trapped, that she deserved more than what she had, that Dad was always working and never paid attention to her, as if that justifies murder. She's sick, Chikwudi said flatly. That's the only explanation. Something inside her is broken. Chitty didn't disagree. Whatever had happened to Amara, whether it was Tun's influence, her own dissatisfaction, or something darker, had turned her into someone unrecognizable. The woman who'd raised her children, who'd been a partner in building their life, had become a stranger capable of monstrous acts. The trial itself was brief, with overwhelming evidence and recorded confessions. The prosecution's case was airtight. Amara's defense attorney tried to argue diminished capacity, claimed she'd been manipulated by Tund, painted her as a victim of coercion, but the recordings of her actively participating in the planning, Her cold calculations about timing and insurance money undermined any sympathy the jury might have felt. Tunn's defense was even weaker. He cooperated with police, but had no real defense against the mountain of evidence. His lawyer could only argue for leniency based on that cooperation, which the judge ultimately rejected. The verdict came after only 4 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts for both defendants. At sentencing, Chitty was given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement. He'd spent weeks writing and rewriting it, trying to find the words to express the magnitude of the betrayal and harm. He stood before the court, looking directly at Amara and Tund, and spoke from his heart. "Your Honor, I stand before you today as a survivor, but barely. The two people on trial today didn't just attempt to take my life. They attempted to take everything. My business, my home, my dignity, my trust in others, and my peace of mind. I met Amara Okonkwo 20 years ago. I fell in love with her warmth, her intelligence, her spirit. I built a life with her, had children with her, trusted her with every part of my existence. For 15 years of marriage, I believed we were partners, that we were on the same team, that we were building something meaningful together. I now know that somewhere along the way, that partnership died in her heart, and she never had the courage or honesty to tell me. Instead, she chose betrayal. She chose conspiracy. She chose to plot my murder rather than simply ask for a divorce. As for Tun Badmus, a man I once considered a colleague and friend, until I discovered his theft and had to let him go, I understand revenge can be a powerful motivator. But attempting to murder your former business partner 3 years after being fired? That's not revenge. That's evil. These two people tampered with my vehicle, sending me on a highway journey that should have ended in my death. Only by the grace of God and what doctors called a miracle did I survive that crash. I spent weeks in a coma, months recovering from broken bones and internal injuries. I still have nightmares about the moment my brakes failed, about the terror of that uncontrolled descent, about the certain knowledge that I was about to die. And then, as if one murder attempt wasn't enough, they plotted a second one. While I lay in a hospital bed fighting for my life, they were already planning how to finish the job. When I returned home to recover, my own wife, a woman who vowed to love and cherish me, was preparing to push me down a flight of stairs to my death. The physical injuries will heal. The broken bones will mend. The scars will fade. But the psychological damage, the inability to trust, the constant second-guessing of relationships, the knowledge that someone I loved completely was capable of such evil, I don't know if that will ever heal. My children have lost their mother, not to death, but to her own poor choices. They will carry this trauma for the rest of their lives, wondering how the woman who raised them could be capable of such acts. I've lost 15 years of what I thought was a good marriage. I've lost my ability to trust easily. I've lost the future I thought I was building. Your Honor, I ask that you impose a maximum sentence allowed by law, not out of vengeance, but out of justice. These two people need to understand that attempting to murder someone for money has consequences. They need time to reflect on their actions and hopefully, eventually, to feel genuine remorse. Most importantly, society needs to know that this kind of evil cannot stand, that we protect the vulnerable, even when the threat comes from those closest to them. That justice will be served, no matter who the perpetrators are. Thank you for your time and attention. When Chitty finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, except for Tuns, who sat stone-faced throughout. Amara was openly weeping, but whether from remorse or self-pity, Chitty couldn't tell and no longer cared. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at both defendants with obvious disgust before delivering her sentence. Amara Okonkwo and Tun Badmus, I have presided over many criminal cases in my 20 years on the bench, but rarely have I encountered such calculated, cold-blooded betrayal as this. You didn't act in a moment of passion or desperation. You planned, plotted, and executed, twice, attempt to murder an innocent man for financial gain. The evidence shows premeditation, conspiracy, and a shocking lack of remorse until you were caught. You weaponized trust, intimacy, and access to perpetrate your crimes. You showed no mercy when Mr. Okonkwo lay in a hospital bed fighting for his life. You showed no hesitation in planning a second attempt. Therefore, I am imposing the maximum sentence. 25 years in prison for each defendant on the charge of attempted murder, to be served without the possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Additional sentences for conspiracy, insurance fraud, and criminal property damage will run concurrently. I hope that during your incarceration, you both have time to reflect on how you betrayed not just Mr. Okonkwo, but your own humanity. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. Amara let out a sob as the guards came to lead her away. Tund remained expressionless, though his hands were clenched into fists. As they were led out, Amara turned to look at Chitty one last time. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and Chitty saw everything he needed to see: regret, shame, and the final death of whatever connection had once existed between them. He nodded once, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement, and then she was gone. 2 years after the trial, Chitty stood in his home, a new home, not the one tainted by betrayal and attempted murder. This was a modern apartment in Victoria Island with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, clean, bright, and full of new memories untainted by the past. His business had not only survived, but thrived. The publicity from the trial, while painful, had actually brought in new clients who respected how he'd handled such a devastating betrayal with grace and dignity. Chitty Okonkwo Logistics was now one of the premier shipping companies in West Africa. His children were doing well. Chikwudi had graduated and was now working in the family business, showing a natural talent for operations management. Adiz was in her final year of university, planning to become a lawyer specializing in domestic violence cases. Her mother's actions had inspired her to help protect others from intimate partner violence. They'd all been to therapy, working through the trauma and betrayal. It was an ongoing process, but they were healing. As for Chitty himself, he'd learned to trust again, carefully, slowly, but genuinely. He'd had a few dates, nothing serious yet, but he was open to the possibility of love again someday. Not right now, not while the wounds were still relatively fresh, but eventually. Inspector Obi had become an even closer friend through the ordeal, checking in regularly, making sure Chitty was doing okay. Barrister Adebayo and Chidinma had become trusted advisors not just professionally, but personally. Life had moved forward, as it always does. Chitty received letters from Amara occasionally, carefully screened by his lawyer before he decided whether to read them. Most he threw away unopened. A few he'd read, finding them full of apologies and explanations that no longer mattered. He'd stopped responding after the first year. There was nothing left to say. Tund never contacted him, which was probably for the best. On the 2-year anniversary of his near death on the highway, Chitty did something he'd been planning for months. He drove to Enugu, not to his family land, but to the site of the accident. The concrete barrier had been replaced, but he could still see the skid marks, the remnants of his near-death experience. He stood there for a long time, remembering the terror that day, the certainty that he was about to die, the pain that followed. But he also thought about everything that had come after, the strength he'd discovered within himself, the justice he'd helped secure, the healing he'd begun. "I survived," he said aloud to the empty highway. "You tried to break me, but I survived." A car passed, its driver probably wondering why a well-dressed businessman was standing on the side of the highway talking to himself. Chitty smiled at the thought. He pulled out his phone and called his children, needing to hear their voices. Both answered immediately, and they talked about ordinary things: Chikwidi's new client acquisition, Adiz's exams, plans for the upcoming holidays. Normal things. Healing things. After ending the calls, Chitty got back in his car, a different vehicle, one with no painful associations, and drove back to Lagos. As the city came into view, its chaotic energy and vibrant life spreading before him, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The betrayal would always be part of his story. The scars, physical and emotional, would always be there. But they didn't define him. He was more than what had been done to him. He was a survivor, a father, a businessman, a friend, and eventually, when he was ready, maybe even someone's partner again. But this time, he'd be wiser. This time, he'd recognize red flags. This time, he'd trust but verify. This time, he'd protect himself while still remaining open to the possibilities of life. Life had tried to break Chidi Okonkwo. His wife had tried to kill him. His former partner had tried to destroy him, but he'd survived it all. And in surviving, he'd discovered a strength he never knew he possessed. As he drove through the Lagos evening traffic, windows down, music playing softly, Chidi thought about a quote he'd come across during his recovery. Some people come into your life to teach you what not to accept. Amara had taught him that, painfully, devastatingly, but thoroughly. And now, 2 years wiser and infinitely stronger, he was ready to write the next chapter of his life. One where he was the author, not the victim. Where he chose trust carefully, but didn't close his heart completely. Where he learned from the past, but didn't let it imprison his future. The sun was setting over Lagos as Chidi pulled into his building's garage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to navigate. But tonight, he was simply grateful to be alive to see another sunset, to hear his children's voices, to have a future at all. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we know the least. Sometimes the perfect marriage is a perfect lie. Sometimes survival requires strength you didn't know you possessed. But always, justice finds a way. And Chidi Okonkwo was living proof of that truth. He walked into his apartment, locked the door securely behind him, some lesson stuck, and settled in for a quiet evening. His phone buzzed with a message from Inspector Obi. Checking in, brother. How are you doing? Chidi typed back, I'm okay. Really okay. Finally. And for the first time since that fateful drive to Enugu, it was absolutely true. Justice was served. Amara and Tun thought they could get away with murder, but Chidi outsmarted them both. They're going to prison for 25 years. What did you think of this story? Could you forgive a betrayal like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story of survival, betrayal, and ultimate justice, give this video a huge like. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion for more incredible stories of karma and justice, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when evil gets what it deserves. Thank you for watching, family. See you in the next story.